Thank you. Uh, Chief Scientist of the Rubicon Project. We run an automation platform for advertising, and one part of our business is to operate an exchange. You might ask what an exchange is. An exchange is essentially a place where ads are bought and sold. Space inventory on the internet in terms of placements where an ad can be rendered, come into an exchange, and we auction them off in real time to one of many bidders, conduct a second price or reserve price auction, clear the transaction, and serve the ad. There is a large amount of protocol to doing this. So when I spoke with Brian, he really wanted to talk about, machines talking to machines. So I'm going to focus on the protocol inefficiencies of this process. There are a lot of efficiencies to the process because this is a rapidly growing marketplace. But there are some interesting inefficiencies caused by just setting machines loose to talk amongst themselves in an ungoverned manner. Also, I'm also co-chair of OpenRTB, which is the major independent protocol that we all use. So let's talk about protocols of ad sales. These are human protocols of buying and selling. So the first kind of protocol is manual one-to-one direct sales. If you're running a website, you have inventory to sell, placements on your site to sell ads. You will negotiate one-to-one with an advertiser for some volume of ads at some price, and you make a deal. That is a very cooperative and a cooperative negotiation. It proceeds over many days, and you agree upon a price and a package, and it's a conversation. What happened is essentially having those one-to-one conversations is rather expensive. So there came to be some aggregators in the space. SSPs, or supply-side platforms, would aggregate a lot of supply and create these economies of scale to go to one place to get access to many, many impressions. And ad networks came to be a place that large buyers would go and put their budget in one organization and have that organization run many campaigns against the SSP to scale their buying behavior. There were some inefficiencies to this. It tended to skew a little bit to the buy side, but it was a way to enable scalable spend. However, it fell short of an efficient marketplace because it didn't have the core interest of each side in mind. So RTB came into being, and that is a simple concept. An impression is offered for sale. It is described via a well-known protocol. Bidders bid. You hold an auction, determine a winner, execute various business rules, determine a price, and serve the ad. The interesting thing about this is it introduced a key aspect of the protocol that wasn't available before. It was optionality. When you as a buyer used to go to a seller and buy impressions, you would give them an ad tag, a piece of code that would render an ad, and they would put it in their ad server as the seller's ad server. And that seller's ad server was really in control of the schedule and allocation of inventory to that buy. Now, of course, that was part of the negotiation process. But at the end of the day, the buyer's system was not involved in the detailed protocol. What actually happened with RTB is that the buyer got the ability to say no to a given impression. So it introduced this optionality, which has been very powerful. So what's happened with the next protocol is we've got private marketplaces. As soon as you introduce an open marketplace, there seems to be this effect that happens that some buyers are like, wait, I don't want to be in an open marketplace. I want to make a little deal over here, get access to some a special product, and we're going to make essentially a side deal outside of the open marketplace. That is happening today. It is essentially part and parcel with a return to the manual one-to-one direct sales, but it's much more automated. And then we have kind of the future protocol, which is programmatic guaranteed. How can we allow these modern protocols to conduct a bilateral transaction where each party's objectives are fulfilled in full? So what is RTB? It's a microeconomic protocol. It is if you are auctioning off individual grains of rice instead of the bag. An impression comes in, buyers signal their interest, the auction is closed, and you've sold that grain of rice. And I say grain of rice because impressions are actually priced per thousand, right? So when you want to buy an ad at $1 CPM, that means that for every 1,000 impressions, this ad will cost $1 to place. So it's microeconomic because we're concentrating on a protocol for very small quantities, individual quantities of something that is priced per thousand. So you have this interesting effect. Sellers, if you're running a website, let's say you're running a major sports website or a major newspaper conglomerate is a better example. You will have sports sections across all of your local newspapers throughout the United States. You'll have opinion sections. You'll have business sections. You'll form local packages for sports. You'll form a nationwide package for the NFL section, which will rise in value before the Super Bowl. And you sell those as packages because what your job is as a marketer, selling your inventory is to package and price it in such a way so that you can sell it to your buyers at scale. Every marketer's job is to package and price their product, and there are strategies to do that. With RTB, you have this interesting thing that happens that if you don't sell it in the normal packaged way, you expose it to an exchange. It is that unit is described via a protocol. By the time it reaches the buyer, information is lost because the package is no longer there. We have a protocol inefficiency, that I'll get into in a minute, having to do with package description. So the seller says, I'm selling an impression from the sports section, but the buyer, by the time they get the impression, they're buying it because they're retargeting you because you were looking at shoes yesterday. So there's a mismatch between what the seller is selling and what the buyer is buying, having to do with this information disparity in the protocol. It is as if Kellogg's has created cereal, and people are buying cereal, but you don't know that what they're actually doing is making essentially a party product, right, out of a mix of cereal. Imagine that you are producing cereal, which is a well-packaged product, it's well-formulated, has a lot of ingredients. But by the time you get to your retail store, what's happened is that your buyers are ripping open all of the boxes, putting them all on the floor, and only buying the red-colored cereal, and leaving the rest of it on the floor as waste for someone else to buy, right? This would be a little disconcerting if you've gone to great effort to make sure that the organic stuff is priced very well, and the sugar cereal for kids has a different price point, and cartoons on everything is carefully packaged and priced, but people are just buying in a way that is completely foreign to your packaging. This is happening today, and it's very interesting. It has to do with the inefficiency of our protocol. So what's happened is a lot of sellers are now doing self-buying. They buy, not only are they using an exchange, now they're actually licensing buying tools, and they're self-buying because of the semantics of the auction encourage this. And what they're finding is when they go and look at their inventory inside a buying tool, it is strange to them. They're not seeing the inventory the way they sell it. They're seeing it the way someone else has decided to index it. The buying tool has decided to index it, right? So it is as if you, in your head, have all of your products carefully organized and packaged. But by the time you go and look at someone else's catalog, everything has been reordered, re-ranked, taken apart, and reshuffled. So questions on inventory. How is it exposed, right? How do you, as a seller who you have a lot of interest in preserving your packaging, because your packaging and your pricing is essentially what differentiates your product, how do you preserve that packaging? Furthermore, when a seller knows that a certain percentage of the buyers are buying in a completely different way than their packaging, how should they respond? basic business, segmentation says that if your buyers are buying in a different way than your packaging, you should change your packaging and thus segment your buyers differently. How do they do that? And then how should you price it? So we're at the point now where we've designed a very robust protocol for real-time buying and selling. We're at a bit of a transition point. The open marketplace game, in terms of sending an impression out and allowing a buyer to buy it with the information provided or with private information, and everyone competes, it's a very well-known game. The highest bidder wins. There are business rules in place having to do with price and who is allowed to buy. These things are well known. It is inefficient because of the reasons that sellers and buyers aren't necessarily aligned. So in order to align them, we really need to come up with some new protocols. We need a set of macroeconomic protocols. RTB is this fairly well perfected microeconomic protocol. Now we need a macroeconomic protocol. What we need to design is a catalog of sites that everyone agrees to, so that when you place your inventory or your inventory packages on the exchange and buyers index them, they're at least able to see them how you have packaged them. Because if you're a buyer and you're executing a blind algorithm and you're missing the key determinant of packaging and pricing, your algorithms will be a little wrong. 2 or 3 impressions will look the same to you but have different prices because they're in different packages on the other side in terms of how they were priced. So we need that packages API. In addition to a well-described catalog of sites, within the sites we need a packages API that says that here's my box of cereal, this is what it looks like, here's the ingredients, I'm offering it for sale. We need an orders API that targets that package and standardizes the method of buying and selling. Because it turns out that although we have mechanized the ability to buy tens of billions of impressions per day, the process to get to that point is quite difficult. There are a lot of steps involved in allocating budget, putting a budget in a system to spend. There's far more friction in that process than there is actually the fairly fluid process of actually buying and spending the money. There's a set of additions to the protocol that enable us to switch from being a completely auction-based semantic to something that has to do with the packaging semantic. And interestingly, there's a lot of non-unified efforts. So today there's disparate protocols, people attacking this in different ways, attempting to redefine proprietary protocols to define them away. So if you step back and you think about what does all this mean, in an ecosystem like advertising, where in order to spend money at scale and reach your audience at scale with the right message, which is the purpose of advertising, especially internet advertising, you have this essentially protocol war and protocol incompleteness that is causing some degree of inefficiency. And if you have inefficiency in a marketplace, then you don't have good pricing. People aren't getting as good of a value out of the marketplace as they otherwise would. And so this is the frontier, is to continue to refine these protocols such that the marketplace is more efficient. To kind of close, I'm going to talk about auctions versus matchmaking. These are two very different ways of thinking about matching buyers and sellers. An auction-based semantic is one where you expose your inventory, people bid, someone wins. Matchmaking has to do with not doing a per impression decision, but making a holistic decision that is good for overall yield and good for what an economist would call the social welfare of the buyers and sellers. These turn out to be two very different things. An auction, you could say, is a greedy protocol, a greedy mechanism that will make per event decisions in an optimal way, but not necessarily make a globally optimal decision. Matchmaking, on the other hand, is a system which is explicitly designed to come up with a market mechanism that makes sure that over this long course of events that buyers and sellers have good social welfare because their orders are being completed. There's a lot of matchmaking involved in high-frequency trading. because things aren't sold one piece at a time. There's orders. There's orders to buy, orders to sell, and these have to essentially come together until such a point as buyers and sellers can be matched. So there's a lot more matchmaking happening in high-frequency trading than in internet auctions. But I actually think we're going to have to work on this next. After we get the protocols right, we're going to have to shift to think more about matchmaking and less about per-impression auctions. So again, the protocols are all about solving for automation. We want to separate the plumbing from the business, get the plumbing out of the way, and let the buying and selling activity continue in its natural course and be as efficient as possible. And most of all, you want to create tools and ecosystems that automate the buying workflow and enable buyers and sellers to find each other. That turns out to be a fairly large problem as the number of advertisers that enter this marketplace increase and the number of websites increase. It becomes difficult to find things. For the same reason we need search engines, we need a better way for buyers and sellers to find each other. So the ultimate goal is to connect the correct buyer to the correct seller with these protocols.
Thank you, Neal.
Thank you.